So we have a few different tools to show you here. These are commonly referred to as sweeps. They can be used as primary tillage, or they can also be used for just straight up cultivation, which is what these are set up for here. Something like this might be used close to the row because it doesn't have the wings on it like this sweep does here. So this sweep is not going to throw as much soil as, say, this sweep here. These are both new, and it's always good to start off with a new sweep, because a lot of times you wind up with an old sweep like this, which has part of the nose broken off of it, and that is not going to do as accurate of a job as, say, one of these other ones. It's not going to have as much cutting action and be as precise. So these sweeps you'll find on a lot of older style cultivators, and most of this stuff is off of old row crop cultivation equipment, which is what we find around in the Midwest quite a bit. It can be used for later cultivation passes on a lot of vegetable crops because they are designed to throw more dirt. They're not going to be as accurate as newer, more modern cultivation equipment. So this is a spring trip shank, which is what the sweep mounts to. Spring trip is the spring here. If you hit a root or a big rock, it'll trip this sweep back so not to break the shank. So this is a little bit different style sweep. We would probably put this, close to your row, and then you would have this sweep following behind something like this to be taking out the middle in between the rows of crop that you're trying to cultivate. This sweep would throw maybe a little bit more dirt than something like this. And again, this sweep here would throw quite a bit more dirt than either one of the two we just saw. Here's another example of an older sweep that is experiencing a lot of wear, which is a very common thing that you'll find when you're purchasing older tractors or older cultivation equipment. One important thing to note is how to set the sweep on a spring trip shank. We want to have the sweep set so it's on a plane that is more flat and not on a plane which is digging into the ground like this. If you're digging into the ground at a steep angle, then you're going to be plowing up more weed seeds, and that will create more issues when you make future cultivation passes, and it'll make each cultivation pass less effective. Now, the way to adjust the pitch of the sweep is by turning the screw or the bolt that's right here. Requires a 3/4 inch wrench, and it moves the plane of the sweep to either be more steep or flat. This is an example of a more modern style sweep from Europe, and they are designed to just be set flat. And you can see the difference between the older style sweeps, whereas these aren't quite as sharp as, say, this edge here. So this is it does have more of a cutting action than, say, this one, which you're just basically using force to sever the weeds. But as you can see from what we have set up here, there's a lot of different ways, or a lot of different sweeps that you can use to eradicate weeds. A sweep like this we use in the wheel tracks to just take up a lot more space. It's not very accurate. And when you're dealing with older equipment, you can see there is slop and wear in a lot of the equipment. So you have to consider that you're not going to be as accurate as you would with a more modern style sweep. And yet one other style is something, it's called a side knife. There is no spring trip here. So if you hit a rock, you might break something, shear a bolt or something. But a pair of these can be used to cultivate pretty closely to a crop. This is how they would be set up here. And I also like to use them backwards to cultivate under a vining crop. So the shank is not doing a lot of disturbance. If this is your crop row right here on the edge of the table, then it's going underneath the vines, not doing as much disturbance to the plant itself, and you're still able to get pretty close to the crop. And the pitch of these can be adjusted by loosening those nuts and by swiveling to a more aggressive plane or a flatter plane, which is not going to throw as much soil. All of these can be sharpened very easily with an angle grinder, and making this edge much sharper, making these edges much sharper on the sweeps themselves. So as we mentioned before, a lot of the older American style row crop cultivators, obviously they have a lot of wear on them, and also they're not exactly set up to be as precise as some of the more modern tools that are coming out of Europe right now. This is a modern style European sweep, or an A blade, if you will. It's got the shape of an A, and it is very different from the other style sweeps. It's sharp. The plane is set to be very flat, so it has more of a cutting action. You'll notice the bevel here. So while it's very flat and it just cuts, there's minimal disturbance to bring up more weed seeds, but just enough disturbance from this bevel here to get dirt off of the roots of weeds to do a more precise job. Something like this, you can go a lot closer to the row that you're cultivating, so you're not going to be throwing as much soil into the row, if anything at all. This is a European style L blade, very similar to the side knives, but again, setting this up with a pair, you can get very close to the row, going very slow. You can get within, a ½ inch to an inch of either side of the row of crop that you're cultivating. And it's very easy to adjust the plane of which the blade is attacking the soil. So something like this, you're digging the sweep further into the soil and making the plane steeper. Something like this is very flat. It's not going to throw hardly any soil at all. It's going to be very accurate for some very young and tender crop like carrots or direct seeded beets. And then something like this is probably not even effective because you're putting the back end of the sweep against the soil, which isn't going to be cutting into the soil at all. And a lot of these tools are very effective when they are run in front of a finger weeder. This one has brushes on it. This can be used earlier than the fingers that you'll see in a moment. The basis of the finger weeder is these metal teeth drive the brushes or the fingers at a faster pace than the tractor is moving through the ground. So it's creating a scrubbing action, which is going to throw weeds out of the soil. The basis behind the finger weeder and almost any other type of cultivation is the crop has to be more established than the weeds. So you're trying to exploit that advantage by not damaging the crop while you're using the finger weeder or any other tool for that matter, but you're killing weeds.